What do you love about being outside and active?
I'm sure I've spent more time outdoors than in. That just feels like home.
Enjoy what you can do, because you never know what is around the corner.
Just being outdoors in the fresh air, it just clears my mind.
Fully immersed in nature is what brings me the most joy.
Hello and welcome back to the Outside and Active podcast, where this week our special guest is Mark White, who's teaching us how to run grateful. One day it will feel like walking. The words of Mark's friend after he explained he had been running for a few months but concluded it wasn't for him. After hearing these words, one day it'll feel like walking, something shifted for Mark. His whole relationship with movement changed, and in an instant he was on his way. In 2002, Mark found himself in rehab for drug addiction. And as part of his rehabilitation, he was introduced to gratitude work. And very quickly, he realized being grateful was a powerful vehicle to uplift him. Fast forward to 2020, one day Mark took on a challenge with a friend of running a mile on the hour, every hour, for 24 hours. And he decided to attach each mile to gratitude. Consequently, Run Grateful was born. And today, their community spans across 80 countries. And in this episode, Mark shares his story and speaks through the importance of being grateful. Learn how and why to run a grateful mile in this episode. Just before we go into the conversation with Mark, I want to ask each of you for a 10-second favor, and that is to share this episode or this podcast as a whole with someone who you think would enjoy it just as much as you. It might be a family member, a friend, a colleague, someone who you think would benefit from these conversations. Especially during January, everyone's doing resolutions, and this episode might help someone out. So just take 10 seconds, share it, and it'll help more than you can even imagine. So thank you for doing so. Right, let's get straight into this conversation with this week's guest, Mark White. Mark, thank you for joining me on the Outside and Active podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And I'm going to kick this chat off by offering you a piece of advice. And that's a piece of advice that comes from a previous guest on the podcast, which today comes from John Myatt, who is someone who has run every day for almost 30 years. Every single day he gets up. He basically said, he made a decision, I think in 1994, instead of going, sometimes we go, shall I go for a run today? Shall I not? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. He said, instead of asking myself loads of questions, I've asked myself one question in 1994, am I going to run for every day? And he does, and he has done. So that was an interesting chat. And his advice for you was to set yourself targets to help you stay active. Now, his target was to run every single day, which he says is quite extreme. But his advice is set targets and it'll help you stay active. Are you quite good at setting targets?
Good bit of advice, and he sounds like he's cool. That's very consistent, eh? Very consistent. Yes, I think I am personally. I've got my own way of doing things. I've got my own structure, I suppose, of how I tend to work and think about what needs to be done. And yeah, nothing's perfect, but yeah, I've got I've done quite a lot with my way of thinking. So I suppose you always want to improve and educate yourself as you go. But I think the fundamentals are in place. Yes, definitely the fundamentals are in place. So with that, I'm hopeful that more can be done.
Love it. That's one opening tradition. The other one is a question I ask to absolutely everyone, and that is, what do you love about being outside and active?
What do I love about being outside and active? I love most of what it brings, to be fair. There's not really a bad thing I can say about it. And I suppose it taps into the gratitude conversation, which I'm sure we're going to dive a bit deeper into with Run Grateful. But, no matter what happens outside, the time, the season, the weather, there's always an opportunity to kind of go out and connect. And as the guy has been doing since 1994, more often than not, is just to kind of move, be active, and just kind of embrace it all, really. Embrace what comes, a bit like life, really. Like I said, no matter what the circumstance outside, you've got to invite it all in. You can't choose the best moments sometimes, because sometimes the best moments are when you least expect it. So, any invitation to get outdoors and connect with your surroundings and where you live or the people you have around you is okay by me. And it's I've never regretted it anyway, put it that way.
When I
might got wet and cold and sunburnt and whatever the weather is, but yeah, I've never regretted it ever.
I think most runners can appreciate and empathise with that feeling for sure. When I chat to people and find out about their stories and where they are now, I'm always interested by the stepping stones, and kind of wanted to find out what your background in running was, more specifically where it kind of came to you. Has running always been part of your life, or is it something that set you on a trajectory to where you are now and something you found later in life?
Yeah, I definitely found it later in life. Depends who you talk to, really. I'm not the oldest guy in the world now. I'm just turned 40. But yeah, definitely kind of wasn't part of my life growing up, apart from the standard stuff you got up to at school. But it's never really anything that I loved or was obsessed with or felt I was any good at. I was pretty quick from a sports day point of view. And I played a little bit of rugby and stuff. They put me on the wing because I could
Be fast.
I could get from A to B pretty quick. Yeah, but my relationship with running was either near or there. Really, it wasn't a negative experience. Like I said, it definitely didn't inspire me to think I found my lane. Unfortunately, fortunately, whatever way you can describe it, at the time, it kind of supported me in a deluded way. But I kind of, in my teens, I went down a different direction because I found, Benson and Hedges and Stella Artois and other mind-altering substances and girls and discos and all that jazz. So so the running, I retired early and then picked it back up again later on, which was back in 2010. So a good period of time. I've been at it pretty consistently ever since then, and that was to give up the Benson and Hedges. I did transition into Marlboro Lights, but my main reason to give running a go was via a good friend of mine who decided to give up smoking at the same time, and he mentioned that running might be a good way of keeping us accountable and keeping us inspired and get us fit, and so that was my reason for why to start. Little did I know that it was literally going to change my life, and everything that I've done ever since has just been as a byproduct of getting out there and getting that first run done.
So getting back into it again and finding running, was that, obviously your friend suggested it, more for the physical positive elements or the mental elements as well, or a bit of both?
Yeah, do you know what? That wasn't really on my mind at the time. It was literally, I wanted to give up smoking. They're not good things. They're not good for you. It's not rocket science. I mean, by that stage, a good few years ago now, but, the awareness around cigarettes and the pictures they put on the packets, and my daughters were now beginning to read and they could see smoking kills, and they used to kind of ask Dad, what does that mean, Dad? And you can't really give an answer to that, really, because even as you're saying that aloud, you even say to yourself, wow, like, this is what you're doing. So anyway, cut a longer story short, it was literally to give up smoking. It was to give myself the best opportunity to stay off the cigarettes. And, my life prior to running consisted of lots of positive habits. I kind of got into the routine of looking after myself mentally more than physically. I was kind of tuned into a certain frequency, and I knew that take cigarettes out of the equation, I could maybe take that to new heights with the physical element to it. Because the idea of being fit, etc., was definitely something that attracted me. But I'd never really had no hard evidence to know what fitness could bring. And now I know on reflection that actually it was the missing component. It was, that same guy, actually, that same friend of mine that invited me into the beautiful thing called running. He actually said to me, there's no better feeling in the world than feeling fit. And like I said, until we kind of experience that for ourselves, we don't quite believe it. And I'm not expecting him to tell me lies. I didn't go that far, but I didn't really understand what he meant. And but now I do. Absolutely. Feeling fit, giving yourself the best opportunity to be as fit as you can. Whatever that means, whether it be running or just moving or, whatever activity kind of floats your boat. It's a great feeling, and add that to the mental side of things, and it's a winning combination, and one that I promote very heavily. And just on a personal level, one that most days, be like that guy. Might not run every day, but definitely every day is definitely something that's on my list of things to do in some form or another.
I couldn't agree with you more on the feeling of being fit side of things. Completely agree. Where did then that take you from, okay, you're getting into running, you're enjoying the feeling of getting fitter, of being fit. Where are the steps and sort of the time scale that then takes you to maybe where the beginning of Run Grateful starts?
Wow, a lot happened. There's a big chunk of time there, which was, quite an exciting time, very up and down time, creatively and entrepreneurially, and everything in between. Really, that kind of journey of trying to, have an impact in the world, trying to show up in certain ways and contribute the best way I could. That was in me. Like I said, prior to starting to run, I was inspired to kind of reach my full potential and to kind of see what I was capable of. And running really just, I think I've already kind of mentioned something along the lines of taking it to new heights. Running definitely added fuel to that creative fire, and this kind of creativity in me was just alive, really. And so that was 2010 that I kind of gave up smoking, started to run. Got quite ill quite quickly, actually. Very shortly after that, as mad as it sounds, I actually got pneumonia and pleurisy.
Wow.
Which kind of, took me back in a period of time. It was a real moment there where, it got a bit hairy for a while, and I was in hospital for a little while, and the recovery was slow. I'd also, I think I've mentioned in a roundabout way that I'm a dad, so I had daughters, I had responsibilities, I had a wife, I had mortgage, I had all this kind of stuff. That what I was getting up to on a daily basis wasn't what I do now. It's very transactional. It was okay. I wasn't unhappy. Definitely knew that I wasn't born to do what I was doing, and I might have had a bit more to give. But having girls and other bits and pieces does restrict you somewhat. Not that, like I said, I lost any sleep over it. It was just the way life was, and I fully accepted it and loved it and embraced it. But yeah, longer story short, is that after starting to run and all these creative juices were running through me, I did feel like I had this entrepreneurial spirit in me that I had to honour, and the ideas were flowing. And my local town of Hoddesdon over in Hertfordshire, I just felt like I could create something pretty meaningful. So this idea called Give Your Town a Run Around, which is ultimately hyper-local, relatable, local people, local places, local things, local businesses. If we could kind of create an opportunity to gather in town, a lot of the conversation was around town centre vibrancy and how we thought about where we lived and about how it wasn't how it used to be. And I was always of the nature that it never was, because people were saying that then. So things always evolve, and how we feel part of something kind of changes as we get older and mature, and our circumstances change. So it's a big conversation. So all this kind of stuff now that I'm speaking to you now about was just things that I was thinking about. So Give Your Town a Run Around was my opportunity to maybe do something and kind of create this space where we could champion where we live, contribute to where we live, and get people together in town to run around it. And it was amazing. So that was 2013. Never had any experience prior to event management or putting on anything of this at all. Completely left field for me, completely.
All a learning curve.
I loved it. All a learning curve. I love the creative process around it, and meeting people and bringing people together and connecting people, and just coming up with the designs and the adverts and the commercials, because all this is pretty new for a little town in Hertfordshire. This stuff you found in the running culture, the running crews of London, and the Adidas and the Nikes and the glitz and the glamour of the cities. Towns like us, I thought, let's bring some of that energy to the towns. So, cut a longer story short, a few years passed. I created Your Town, which is a community interest company. We created Your Town Runners, Your Town Walkers. Give Your Town a Run Around was just going from strength to strength, lots of interest, being recognised as one of the best ideas for towns in the UK. I got voted the top social entrepreneur in the UK later on. And it was great. It was working. It was amazing. I was finding my purpose. I was finding my spirit. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to have an impact. And 2020 happened, and we couldn't see each other. I always knew that maybe Your Town wasn't going to be my eventuality, just because of the nature of community orientated organisations. Is it's not commercially led, it's more impact driven. So I had to get that balance in life, because it was taking more than I had. And but the impact was just to fuel because that was amazing to know that the impact it was having, the changes it was making, the people's stories, and how it kind of galvanised and inspired and energised them was just why I do what I've done. But like I said, it wasn't sustainable necessarily. But it still exists. It's still doing beautiful things in various places, and it's going from strength to strength with Your Town Runners, etc. But yeah, a lot of that fed into Run Grateful. So 2020 happened, and Run Grateful was born. And I'm getting fed up my own voice now, so I'm sure you can duck in here with a bit of a question around it all. But
I need
to take a breath.
Yeah, take a breath, grab a cup of tea. One of the quotes I'm sure I saw on the website: "On a mission to connect the world through movement and gratitude." And that's quite a high mission statement. That's quite different to connecting a town and having an impact on a small town in Hertfordshire, like you said. Does that kind of characterize you in terms of reaching big goals and setting big goals? And it kind of winds back to the idea of setting targets that John said about at the beginning.
Listen, it's all in the same conversation. It's like anything, it depends on who you talk to, but missions and visions and all that kind of stuff is important part of the landscape when you enter into something, and know what you're working towards. But sometimes I've had a funny relationship over the time with this type of stuff, because I don't want it to feel like a headline. I don't want it to feel like, just attention grabbing, just, oh, that sounds all nice and romantic, but listen, it exists. It is a powerful statement. And through my experiences with Your Town in particular, I know the power of connection. I know the power of what can happen when a collective kind of comes together, and I know the power of gratitude, because it's changed my life, saved my life. It's a huge, gigantic anchor in my life. It's something I always lean into every day. So you talk about running every day, gratitude every day for me as well. And I'm not unique. So and what I mean by that is this stuff is pretty accessible for all. It's just there's an education piece in and amongst that. Gratitude is a word that is used often and maybe people see, but they don't for whatever reason practice it consistently, or they don't feel, or they kind of just genuinely speaking as a headline kind of just assume, I'm grateful, of course I'm grateful for X, Y and Z. We're actually, like a lot of things in life, if you dive a bit deeper, and it's not always so heavy, but if you look into it a little bit, then actually it can really take you places and could really change lives, and transform lives. So for the power of the Grateful Mile, which is only what we represent at Run Grateful, I think we can transform lives by connecting movement with gratitude, and just sprinkling some awareness around that is what we're doing. So
tying it all together, because people listening that maybe don't know exactly what Run Grateful is, they're kind of getting the idea of running and the idea of connection and gratefulness. But what is it that practically about Run Grateful that people get involved with, and what is it that you actually do, and how do you bring people together, and what is its purpose?
Well, so going back to what you just mentioned there about, I believe that we could kind of create a more connected world. I really do. There's I say noise. It's more serious than noise. Although some of it is noise. But yeah, listen, we always live in a heightened state. There's always things going on, no matter where you're from. Yeah. What part of the world you're from, what the situation is. I think as humans, to be on the same page at any given time is very tough. How we relate is very tough, and if we don't identify, we tend to judge, and and that divide that kind of goes on, and as we all evolve and the world's changing, it's like how are we moving with that change, how we're adapting to that change. It's a big conversation, very big conversation, and but I really believe that kind of that more connected world through movement and gratitude can kind of have a dent in bringing people together. What do we have in common? What can we do rather than what we can't? What have we got rather than what we haven't? Where do we come from rather than where we're going? And just kind of flipping a lot of it is on its head, really. And I think a lot of good work, a lot of life-changing work, a lot of transformative work, there you go, can be done within a Grateful Mile. So that's the initial invitation with us, to go out and experience a Grateful Mile, and to show people they can improve their mental and physical well-being, through a Grateful Mile, and to experience it at least once in their life is something that's very important to me. And what we mean by a Grateful Mile is just use that chunk of time, whether you walk or run it, whether it's for some people 6 minutes, for some people it's 5 minutes, or whether it's 15, 20 minutes, wherever you do that mile, just kind of use that time to maybe focus on something or someone that you're grateful for, that uplifts you, that inspires you, that guides you, or an experience that you've had, anything, no matter what it is, even if you feel like you haven't got anything to be grateful for. Maybe you're in a certain stage of life where you feel like life's against you and, you're kind of clutching at straws regardless of this. There's always something to be grateful for. If you're lucky enough to move, then that's a huge, gigantic thing that we might often take for granted. So some people can't for whatever reason. So yeah, whatever it is, whatever your reason, to get out there, use that as your fuel for that mile, and then we hopefully can take you on a bit of a more mindful movement journey, and go down a bit of a rabbit hole with it, really, or whatever it is. Like I said, the rabbit hole hasn't got to be so scary and fearful. For some, it can be really light and could just be used as a way of inspiring you and to kind of go out there and inspire others. But for others, they might want to kind of go on a journey with us and become more self-aware and to get positive practices in their mind around gratitude work or other things of that nature. And it all kind of starts within a mile, and that mile could turn into 2, 10, 12, whatever the case may be. But to invest a mile in yourself a day, for me, feels accessible and obviously doable. For most people, you'd like to think so, and if not, that opens up another conversation around, okay, if you can't go and walk at least a mile a day, then what are you doing? You know, and you might be doing other things. So I'm not belittling what they do, but I feel like the relationship you can kind of have with this could do a lot of good on top of what you already do.
It definitely struck me when I was reading about this and researching about you and what Run Grateful stands for, is that I was thinking, okay, well, yeah, of course I'm grateful for, I know you kind of touched on it there, of course I'm grateful for my family and being able to run and being able to travel and maybe where I live in the world, and compare yourselves to other parts of the world that maybe aren't so fortunate. And I was like, well, actually, do I actually take, whether it be 5 minutes or even 5 seconds, to actually appreciate that? And I think then my mind went to, well, when would I do that? And then I thought, well, actually running, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, running really fosters an open mindset and a positive mindset, because we can often get in this hamster wheel of life where we just kind of go from, everyone's situation is different, but up, work, family, friends, bed, stress, difficulty, busyness. And actually taking the time out, and that's one of the things we promote on this podcast and through Outside and Active, is being able to take time to focus on a healthy health and fitness lifestyle if you can. And I think running is something which fosters what you're talking about, because it's being grateful. Am I going to do that in my lunch break when I'm eating food and chat to people? Am I going to do that, when just before I'm going to bed, maybe if I'm journaling? But actually running, it's that space, it's that connection with the outdoors, it's the connection with other people, and gives you that opportunity to have that grateful conversation with yourself. Do you think that the running plays a big part on that? But how important is that connection?
Yeah, I think it's huge personally, and like you said, we're not here to kind of downplay any form of running or movement. Whether people are chasing PBs or setting certain goals for themselves, and and whether they're working towards marathons or 10Ks or ultras or 5Ks, counts to 5K. Like I said, whatever your relationship with running, whatever your reason for running, it's fantastic. Just hopefully, I know a lot of people, as you probably do, and where we sometimes put a bit too much pressure on ourselves, and we kind of use it to go against us and become slightly obsessive with it. And if we don't do certain things, then, for me, when it comes to running and movement as a whole, but, if we're talking about running specifically, then, it should be a space or an environment in which, like we said, there's some science behind it. We're kind of out there, we're moving forwards, all the endorphins and that going, all the scientific nature of running and all the value that it brings. Add the frequency of mindful movement to that, i.e. gratitude, and all of a sudden it can take you places, and, for some people, love the place it takes if they hit a certain goal and, they're hitting a certain mile or 200 meters or whatever the scenario is. And so for me, like I said, it's all I've always leaned into this more than the other. It's just been my relationship with it, and where it's an area in my life where, I've got many areas in my life where I feel there's pressure and there's stress and there's anxiety and all that lovely stuff, which is part of life. And I think we spoke about it earlier on in this conversation.
Yep.
You've got to embrace it all, because otherwise it'll just chew you up. And yeah, running's been a big learning for that. The kind of running and life, there's a coming together there, which is like the resilience, the just keep going, just breaking it down to a day at a time, to a mile at a time, to not feeling like it some days, but getting out there anyway. All these kind of stuff, which absolutely is the same story to life. So there's loads of learnings in there, and like I said, there's a frequency just around more mindful movement, being aware about your environment, being aware about what's around you. I don't know about you, but sometimes I could go out and some people have this experience on a car journey, and then you get back and you wonder what the hell just happened, because you've just been in your head, and but actually, consciously, I've done it the other day. I done it on Sunday, and it doesn't matter, because like the mind's a tricky business sometimes. It always tells you it's the first time. All the experience that I've had, all the evidence that I've got, everything I'm talking to you about now, over the last 10, 12 years, still on Sunday, I kind of had to tell myself it's okay to stop and just to take 30 seconds. No one, no one's going to kill you. No one's hiding in the bushes and going to jump out at you and whatever. It's okay to just stop. No one's timing me. I don't care about that. So it's just funny how the mind works, and it's just, you've always got I say always, it does sound like a relentless task, but most of the time you just got to be kind of kind to yourself and not beat yourself up too much. And tomorrow's another day, the next run's another run. And yeah, that gratitude piece, I think, is a fundamental part of any kind of learning process, really. And like you said, whilst out, it can change a lot. It can change your perspective on something. It could change a relationship. It could change a certain conversation you need to have, because it just allows you to, that time whilst out, to maybe look at, take responsibility, look at the part that you have in this situation, look at what you can do, or maybe what you can say, and before you know it, you're back, and something positive has happened, and you've had a run, which is also great. So win-win.
And so Run Grateful kicks off in 2020. How is the community? See, some of them will be the existing running community. Some people will be brand new to the running community, and this will be an avenue into it. How has that grown and kind of flowered over the past few years?
Oh, it's been overwhelming, really. So it kind of happened by accident, to be fair, because COVID happened.
as most good things do.
Yeah. Like I said, there's certain things that have happened over the years which have transitioned over to Run Grateful from my Your Town days, which just is obvious, and it's the way it's always meant to be. There's a common thread going through my work and my approach and how I see the world. But a good friend of mine was captain of one of our Your Town running groups. We were meant to do an ultra together, our first ultra, which is something brand new to me. It's a bit like when I got into running. A good friend of mine, the guy that got me into running, I remember saying to him after 2 or 3 months, I don't know if running's for me. I might try other things, but I don't know if it's for me. And because I was putting pressure on myself, etc. And he said, one day it'll feel like walking. So as soon as he said that, my relationship with it changed forever, and all the work that I'd done for the last, 8-10 years prior to that, because like I said, I was getting up to certain things in the well-being space, in inverted commas. So all of a sudden that relationship married up for me, and I never looked back. But fast forward to this guy, Danny, a good guy, like I said, captain of the Your Town runners over in Cheshunt in Hertfordshire. He was talking about ultras, and I've never done a marathon either. And
right.
Anything over 10K, I used to get bored. And he said, no, ultras, it's not like marathons. He said, it's time outdoors and it's time on your feet. And the way he positioned that to me, I was like, wow, that sounds attractive. That definitely sounds inviting to me. So we signed up to our first ultra together. COVID happened. Obviously, it all got postponed. And then he messaged me and said he's come across this thing, this 24-hour thing. You run a mile on the hour every hour for 24 hours. And then in between the miles, this guy had done odd jobs around the house just to make a bit of a YouTube video out of it. So I was like, that's cool. You do a 5K actually in between that. So collectively, it's a marathon distance within the 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's cool. Yeah, I'll be spontaneous. I'll do that. No problem. I didn't do the odd jobs. I chose to share and dedicate every mile to gratitude. and I jumped on my social media and shared images about people, places, things. And Run Grateful was born because, like I said, gratitude running, mindful movement, mindful running. I was getting up to that anyway. So now I was just taking it more mainstream. And at the end of that 24-hour process, immersing myself in this experience and this deep gratitude and movement, I was like, wow, how could other people experience this? What would that be called? How could we open it up to others? So I called it Run Grateful. The 24-hour thing isn't for everybody. So that's when I kind of invited people to say, listen, forget about that. If it's not your bag, start with a grateful mile, whether you walk or run it. And ever since, fast forward, now it's got my full focus. It didn't do because I was up to St. Kilda for a period of time. But now, over 80 countries have got involved with what we do. We've done the 24-hour event in the UK every year. Just took it to Australia. Just come back from Bondi in Sydney, where we done the 24-hour event for Men's Mental Health Month, which was really cool. We've got loads of stuff that's been thought of, loads of stuff that we've done. I've missed loads. We've done stuff in primary schools. We've kind of piloted some concepts which we're looking to bring to life more in 2024. We've done some amazing work with some amazing organisations. Now the framework's in place to really accelerate a lot of what we've done because we know it works. And the people that gravitate towards us and contributed grateful miles over the last few years have got a great deal from it. And like I said, been overwhelmed by the people that I've met, the stories that we've heard, and to know that we've had a part to play in all that is something worth fighting for. And so that's why next year, 2 years, we're looking to do a lot of really big things around the world.
There's a few things in there that you touched on that I've actually written down, and I would draw on a couple of them. One of which is the 24-hour event, and that's something that we've spoken before. Is we're going to get involved in a team because, like you said, there's the running the Grateful Mile and that sort of gateway to running that you're getting a lot of people through, but they're in these events as well, which are obviously a challenge and something for people to take on, like you said you did with yourself. And so they sound interesting and exciting. The other thing is that something, weirdly, I don't necessarily plan this, but sometimes guests and the advice that they give previous to the next relate accidentally. I mean, obviously, you and John, the person who I gave advice to, are runners and in that running world, so there's going to be a natural relation. But the quote which I actually written down, one day it'll feel like walking, which is what your friend had said to you after you were struggling, is something that John says now for him, because I asked him about motivation and difficulty and injuries. He said, well, it does just feel like walking to me sometimes now. Like, yes, it's going to be tough when it's cold and wet and whatever, but it does feel like walking. And I just found that a funny relation, and I'm glad that you picked up on that yourself. And then the final thing, I actually wanted to hold kind of a mirror up to you about, you're saying it's grown so much. It's in 80 different countries, and there's so many plans for the future and all of these type of things. And you're spending your life asking people to feel grateful and reflect on their lives. And if I held the mirror up to you and say, well, are you able to be grateful and appreciate the positivity that you've spread over the past few years of this, and kind of sit back and go, wow, this is like, I'm not done. This isn't the end game, but wow, what we've achieved so far. And on a personal note, what I've achieved so far is great.
Maybe
humble.
No, I don't know what words you want to use, but I do try very hard. And like I say, I do practice what I preach. And, it is very important for me. And it's kind of one of the, biggest approaches I have with fathering my daughters is I'd never ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't ever be willing to do myself or have done. So similar, the power of the Grateful Mile is something I absolutely believe in. And to give access to that to others is something I'm very, very passionate about, as I've probably mentioned more than once. And for me to kind of see it play out, yes, you always there's fine lines, with all this kind of stuff. There's appreciating how far you've come and what you've done, but then there's also knowing that, you're not even touched the side yet, and it's not obsessive, it's not unhealthy, it's that relentless. It's like the miles keep on coming.
Yeah.
If you choose to walk them or run them, the days keep on coming. Why I'm here, and why these days are still here for me, then I just want to do what I can to do as much as I can, but also with that balance, because I know my priorities. I know, I know that nothing happens overnight. I know a lot of what we're talking about now might be a bit romantic to a lot of people. Because sometimes the world can be quite disheartening, and everyone's out for themselves, and all this kind of nature and that kind of energy is a bit overwhelming at times. But I honestly believe in what we're doing. So for me to take, and you've mentioned the word appreciate, and that's for me what gratitude is largely. Is it's just a deep appreciation, deep appreciation for the process, and knowing that we can't promise every day is going to be a happy day. Run Grateful, we can't promise you happiness all the time. We're going to have some dodgy runs, we're going to have some dodgy days, but you will get through them. So if we can bring a bit of hope and guide people through as we navigate through the process, then I'm super keen to know that within myself. So that's where the gratitude comes for how far we've come, because everything that I'm putting out into the world are things that I kind of largely know about, but also knowing that I know nothing, and I've got so much more to learn as we embark on the next stages. And then you're talking about the other area of Run Grateful, which is, okay, what does that look like? The scalability. Could it? You mentioned about the Your Town and the hyper-local nature of what I described, and just going to Sydney. Gratitude is a global language. It's a global currency. Everyone could tap into it at any time, and like I said, movement largely for most people. So with that in mind, I do believe I'm grateful, scalable. And then it's just like the business side of it, in inverted commas. It's like, okay, where's my skill set? What am I good at? Can I grow teams? Am I, how can we grow this? How can we grow partners? How can we get this in? And that's muddy nature for me. I just want to do the work, what I mean? And, and it's not to say I just want to do the good bits. Far from it. I think we all know 80% of it is done behind closed doors, out of the shadows, not having to tell everybody everything all the time, anywhere, because you're just cracking on, making things happen behind the scenes. And part of me sometimes is a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't want to share everything all the time and put yourself out there necessarily, but that one feeds the other, and this is also an important part of kind of getting out my own way, because I want Run Grateful to reach its full potential. So in order for that to happen, I need to do more things like this. So like I said, there's always learning, never reach that final destination. I think Nike said it earlier days, because it was their tagline before Just Do It. There is no finish line. But yeah, I believe we've got a lot more to do, and I believe I'm the man to do it. So with that in mind, I'll see what I can do, and if the day ever comes where I feel like I'm getting in the way, I'll step aside, because Run Grateful is bigger than me.
I feel like I've been quoting you, Run Grateful, back at you, but I think it's important for people that might not have gone through your website and see what you do, because this one especially, I think, will appeal to those that maybe think, oh, well, why just 1 mile, or why would I, if I've not run before, why would I just do that? And it says, we're on a mission to help everyone experience at least one grateful mile. And you did say this earlier, in their lifetime, because we believe it won't stop at one. And that's the really important thing for me. Is like, and that's the idea of the catching the bug. Okay, for some people, it might just be a bit longer than a mile. It might be a few months before you really get it. But the idea of this is, again, I've used that word again, is a gateway into it.
Yeah, chip away, and whether you're going out on a 18-mile marathon training run, out of them 18 miles, dedicate one to being a grateful mile, even if it's your warm down mile, and if you're obviously on a mission to hit certain things throughout that training run, there's always room for a grateful mile. So yeah, like I said, whether you are, we've had people do the 24-hour events that are like 100-mile plus, and we've had people do them that have never done, that have just kind of got into 5-10Ks and everything in between. So yeah, how you integrate them into your life there's access to everybody, no matter where you are on your running journey. And like I said, it could be a gateway into getting into it, and all of a sudden you'll walk that mile, and then a week, 2 weeks later, because like anything in life, if you're consistent, you just find naturally you maybe go a bit further or a bit quicker. So that walking a mile after a couple of weeks might turn into walking it a bit quicker, then it turn into a little light shuffle, and all of a sudden you might go a bit further, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're on the course to do your first 5K. And so, when did that start? Actually, it started with a grateful mile. So okay, I wasn't expecting that. Well, if you show up, that's tend to be what happens. Things progress, and you might think that you are doing things now that you weren't capable of doing. So yeah, all that kind of, it's all lovely stuff.
Well, I wanted to finally ask you, before I ask you for your piece of advice and where people can go to find out about everything we've spoken about. On your social media, there was a picture of you and a group of people doing a Grateful Mile and running with tape over your mouths, and just wanted to ask a bit more about what that was for.
Yeah, that's something that we get up to with some of the things that we do. I don't want to talk in riddles, but some of what we put on, I like to leave a bit of open-mindedness to it, so people don't quite know what to expect. But the tape over the mouth, I've been doing it for years. It's hit the mainstream this last, however long, year, 18 months or so. There's deep science behind the value that can kind of bring, which I'm not a scientist to kind of, I know what I know, which inspires me to do it. But it's just great. My main reason for positioning it within Run Grateful and some of what we do is just that kind of, bringing us back to the present, having an open mind, playing around with your relationship with running and movement, trying new things, and just experiencing it, really, because as many times as we can pull ourselves into the present, the better. And a big way to do that is with the breath. And if we are focused on nasal breathing in particular, as I said, the science behind why that's better for us anyway, and then kind of less anxiety, less stress. You're breathing from different parts of your body. It's not so, it's more diaphragm rather than chest. So all this kind of stuff. But, we weren't actually born to breathe through our mouths, believe it or not. But I don't know about you, but when I run, I tend to breathe through my mouth a lot. So it's just nice when you're forcing yourself. I say forcing yourself like it's hard. It is more difficult, but it's not impossible. And obviously, I'm not, a doctor here. So if you've got nasal issues, etc., then please don't try out the back of me.
Warning sign on
that. In a controlled environment, which we facilitate, and being responsible, we invite people to maybe experience a mile with tape over their mouths, just to kind of see how it makes them think and feel, really, and play around with their relationships. Really, really important for me.
I think that's something that people will go away and safely do. I know that's what I'll be doing. But what I also want people to go away and do is find out more about what we've been speaking about and run grateful. And I'm going to use that word again. I'm very grateful for your time. And I think it's something, I always want people that listening to this and the things we think about and talk about, people to go away and either they might not have heard of before, but be able to actually incorporate into their own journeys themselves. And yes, it doesn't have to be running. Like you said, it can be in other ways. It can be walking, cycling, whatever it may be. But having that opportunity to be grateful and to think, I can actually, it's quite an easy thing that I can incorporate into my own journey, but it's going to be really impactful. And it's something that I've maybe not thought about before. So I'm very appreciative of your time. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing, what you've been doing, and also what's going to be coming up in the future?
Yeah, so I suppose websites is it's the best place, rungrateful.com. You've got a link tree on there, and that's on our Instagram as well. But, it kind of diverts you into, we've got our own podcast as well, Move with Gratitude. Some, films we created around our 24-hour experiences that we've put on over the last few years, just in the UK and now Sydney, which is incredible. Just genuine information about who we are, what we do, why we do it. There's loads to come in 2024, loads of new great stuff, which is really exciting. And like I said, if you're interested in a more mindful approach, or you're just getting into running, it's a bit scary, and you find that maybe the way that we are might be a bit more inviting, then you're more than welcome. And there's a lot more to come from us. So we see where these feet take us.
And the links to those what you've just mentioned will be in the podcast description, and also the article on outsideandactive.com. I kicked off this podcast offering you a piece of advice from John, who's been running every day for almost 30 years. Now is your opportunity to leave a piece of advice for not only the listeners, but someone who is coming onto the podcast as a guest in the near future.
Yeah, it's a funny old one, advice. Like I said, we're all here and I having our own lived experience. So I think we've kind of brought it up in our conversation just around, for anyone to be on the same page at any given time is tough, So I don't know. I think my advice is just, I suppose one of the biggest things that changed my life forever, back in 2002. So I ended up in rehab when I was like 18. I had my 19th birthday in rehab just for addictions and stuff. So very scary time, very dark, uninspiring. And then through an open mind, that kind of opened up everything for me, and so my bit of advice to anybody is have an open mind. and just try anything once, or try most things once, and always ask yourself up front, okay, what's the worst that's going to happen here? So it's all right to go out there and try everything. If it's going to be, have a negative impact on something, then, try and think twice about it. But most things, especially when it comes to well-being, tape over mouth, breath work, meditations, mindful, some people might look at mindful movement and go, what's all that about? It's a bit too much for me. No, thank you very much. You crack on, you do you, I do me, and all that judgmental mind. But actually, is doing a mindful, bit of mindful movement, having a bit of mindfulness in your life, doing a grateful mile, is it going to do any harm, really? It might not be for you, but at least try it. If at the end of it, we go back to that kind of mission vision stuff, if after a grateful mile, you email us and say, you were full of shit, no thank you very much, mate, I feel absolutely terrible, then fair enough. But I don't think it's going to happen. So, it's a bit of a long answer there. But, my bit of advice is always have an open mind. Be willing to try most things, and you'll be okay.
I love it. I look forward to passing that along. Mark, thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks so much. Take it easy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Outside and Active podcast. How are your New Year's resolutions going? Let us know over at Be Outside, Be Active on Instagram. Send us a DM, send us a message about how you're getting on, how you're spending New Year's, and also drop us a follow. And you can check out more from Outside and Active at outsideandactive.com. You can go through and check all of our previous episodes with amazing guests on the podcast, either on Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this. And like I said at the beginning, please share with someone, a friend, a family member, a colleague who might benefit from these conversations and enjoy them just as much as you. Thank you for that in advance. Thank you to Mark for coming on the podcast. I very much value your time and the really inspirational story that you told, and I think Run Grateful is doing an amazing thing. You can go and check that out in the podcast description. It's down there, or wherever you're listening to this. There should be a link in the description, or just head to Run Grateful on Mark's social media. I'll be back next week with another episode of the Outside and Active podcast. My name's Dominic Brown, and until then, enjoy the outdoors.